同你哋講一句話，呢句話係乜嘢 ？PAP， 佢哋講乜嘢啊？佢哋講人命，你哋冇錢冇得傾，係咪？我哋 SDP 呢，我哋講冇錢仲有傾。所以咧，我希望你哋人民會支持新加坡民主黨，大家投民主黨嘅一票，好唔好？多謝啦。Saudara-saudari, puan-puan. Selamat datang. Selamat sejahtera untuk anda sekalian. Saya tak boleh cakap bahasa Melayu. Sikit-sikit conversation boleh. Tapi cakap banyak susah. Saya ibu, dia bapa orang peranakan. Lu tahu lah, orang baba cakap sikit bahasa Melayu, sikit bahasa Inggeris, sikit Hokkien, campur-campur macam rojak. Tapi rojak sedap. Bahasa rojak sangat Singaporean, betul. Makcik, pakcik, saya faham. Kos sara hidup di Singapura really tak boleh tahan. Saya tahu. Lu pergi hawker center makan atau pergi kedai membeli barang-barang keperluan macam minyak lah, gula lah, susu lah, semua harga pun naik, tapi satu item saja tidak naik, lu gaji tidak naik. Saya ingin menurunkan kos sara hidup SDP. Saya apologize, banyak maaf, bahasa Melayu tak baik. Tapi lu boleh faham English. Saya hati sangat gembira. Saya kasih Encik Daman Huri dan Encik Siddiq menurunkan SDP policy. Boleh? Kami masuk parlimen, semua orang senang sikit. Kenapa? Kerana kami calon-calon SDP banyak kuat. Lu mesti sokong SDP. Undilah SDP. SDP boleh? SDP boleh? SDP? 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 Terima kasih. Vanakkam. Jangan naik kak, ketiga, makalin yunggal. Nandri. My fellow Singaporeans. It's so good seeing all of you again at an election rally.
Welcome back!
Thank you for this very wonderful. I am humbled.
SDP!
I am also thrilled to stand before you again tonight after a long break, a very long break, and to share with you the exciting message of the SDP. A message that for 15 years I've been working on. A message that I want you to help me spread throughout Singapore. And the message is this: never before in Singapore's history has an opposition party built up an alternative platform, backed up by a set of comprehensive policies, and then fielded a slate of candidates with the right stuff to push for these policies in the next parliament. We do this because we are a responsible party, a competent and constructive party. We do this because we want to give you a reason to vote for the SDP, not just against the PAP. We do this because we want to build a system where we can have intelligent and substantive debates in Parliament, where policies come under intense scrutiny by SDP MPs. Through the course of this campaign, my fellow candidates and I will highlight the alternative ideas that the SDP has drawn up. And we will explain how they will ease the burden for you. But there isn't enough time for me to go through all of the details of our policies, and this is why I invite you to go to our website at yoursdp.org and read for yourselves how our ideas can help you. So what is it that we want to make better? The most pressing issue that you've told us is the high cost of living. And because of this, the stressful lifestyle that we all struggle with in Singapore. In 2014, a survey by the Credit Lyonnais Securities Asia showed that almost half of households in Singapore have little or no savings. In other words, they live from paycheck to paycheck. Now, this is the middle class we're talking about. They're just one bill away from financial ruin. If your children contract a serious illness, or say if your elderly mother falls and breaks her hip and needs to go to hospital, or you get into an auto accident, you are staring into a financial abyss. Now, I don't know what you're going to do if this happens, but I know what I am going to do. I'm going to go into Parliament to make sure that we lower the cost of living. That same survey found that the majority of our elderly indicate that they are not saving any money. Is this any surprise? After we work all our lives to pay off our HDB loans, how much do we have left? And the little that we have left, the PAP now wants to withhold it under the minimum sum scheme. The survey also found that a high proportion of younger Singaporeans in their 30s and their 40s are unable to save. Now, you don't need to be a genius to figure out that it is the cost of living that is the cause of much of our difficulties. In 2001, according to the Economist Intelligence Unit, we were only the 97th most expensive city in the world. In just over 10 years, we jumped to becoming the most expensive city in the world. PAP will tell you that all this is because of world trends, nothing they can do about it. This is patently untrue. Our financial and economic stress is a direct result of PAP policies. And I'll show you how. In 2001, Mr. Lee Hsien Loong, who was then the Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister, he rewrote the Banking Act to attract the super rich to come to Singapore. As a result, we have the highest proportion of millionaires and billionaires in the world. The massive inflow of foreign capital pushed prices of everything, housing, cars, rent, your food, so on, pushed all these prices up. At the same time, the PAP opened the floodgates and imported en masse cheap foreign labor. Now you're competing with foreign workers who can take the kind of salary that you cannot survive on. This double whammy of the escalation of the cost of living on the one end and the stagnation of wages on the other, both born out of PAP policies, is making life extremely tough for our people. It's the same dismal outlook for our younger Singaporeans, including our graduates. For them, the future looks anything but hopeful. They now have to compete with foreign students for places in our university. And these foreign students are, for some reason that I still can't quite figure out, getting generous financial assistance from the government. And when our local students graduate, they have a tough time finding jobs. And when they finally end up with a job, many are underemployed, engaging in low-paying or low-skilled positions. Again, because they are competing with foreigners in our own backyard. How many times have you heard of university graduates, some even with advanced degrees, having to resort to driving taxis? Not that there's anything wrong with driving taxis. It's an honest living, and I have tremendous respect for our taxi drivers when they go out for such long hours. But clearly our university graduates are not being employed in the fields that they've been trained for, and there is something wrong with our system. And with high SDP prices, housing has become largely unaffordable for young couples. Because of all this, our work-life balance is completely out of kilter. If you so much as to dare leave the office at 5 and say that you want to spend time with your family on weekends instead of coming back to the office, you're afraid that your boss will replace you with a foreign worker, because there is an abundant supply of them in Singapore. All this is making Singapore a very unhappy place to live. A Gallup poll found recently that Singaporeans were the least likely to report having positive emotions. Another survey conducted by the Randstad Group just last year found that Singaporeans are the least happy and the most stressed out workers in Asia. As a result, many Singaporeans choose to emigrate to other countries. Unfortunately, these are, according to the government, the top 4 or 5% of our talent pool. The very people whose skills we need in Singapore. So what does the PNP do? Instead of reviewing its policies that are causing all of these problems, it comes up with this brilliant idea to replace us with foreigners. In the past decade or so, we have brought in so many foreign workers that for every 10 people that you see out in the street, only 6 are Singaporeans. Now I want you to listen carefully, because this is where it gets crazy really fast. The PAP sees all these Singaporeans leave, and it hatches the idea to bring in foreigners to replace us. This makes this crowded island even more congested, which leads to greater competition for jobs, making the already stressful situation here even more intense. And in turn that leads to even more Singaporeans wanting to leave, and on goes the crazy downward spiral. We saw this happening 20 years ago. We tried to warn Singaporeans about the damage that it was going to cause. I can show you all copies of our newspapers, the new damage, where we tried to warn Singaporeans of PAP's intentions, policies. We said that we needed an opposition in Parliament, an effective opposition that will think for you, that will look out for you, an opposition like the SDP. But election after election, the PAP candidates were voted in with overwhelming majority, and there was no one to check its policies, no one to review its policies, resulting in the problems that we have today. Will it happen again this election? Will Singaporeans, with all the problems that we are facing, problems which I repeat are a direct result of PAP policies, vote in the PAP again in such numbers that we only end up with one party in the House?